Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the Future Ready CFO, Winning the Great Resignation and the Future of Finance. Our speakers today are Rebecca Brown, Director of Development, Maryland Association of CPAs, and Tom Hood, EVP Business Growth and Engagement, AICPA, CIMA, and the Business Learning Institute. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to them. This program has been approved for 1 to 1.5 CPE credits, depending on how long we go today. Just be sure that you respond to the polling questions if you would like to receive CPE credit for this session. Okay, Rebecca.
Good afternoon. It's just now 12 o'clock, so I can say that and it will be correct. Tom, do you want to kick off the topic or you want me to start?
Yeah, actually, I'll kick off because my slide's up here right now.
Oh, that's, yes.
It's awesome. Great to be with you. Obviously, I worked with Rebecca for quite a few years at the Maryland Association of CPAs, and about a year ago moved up to the global stage with the AICPA and CIMA. And what you might not know is about 5 years ago, we merged CIMA, which is a global accountancy organization dedicated to management accounting, the CGMA designation, and the AICPA, which many of you probably know, for the CPA population, including business and industry folks like those of you on the call. That brought together effectively now, we have 700,000 members, students, and engaged professionals spanning 192 countries. And I'm the Executive Vice President of Business Engagement and Growth, charged with kind of elevating the whole management accounting and corporate side of our profession. And one of the things that's woven through this session that we're going to do with Becca here is we started a Future of Finance group back in the spring of 2021 and had a big summit at the end of the year in December and another one just this past month. So we're going to share the latest results from that with you as we go through this. And now I'll turn it over to Rebecca, who's the Director of Development for the MACPA.
Yes, good afternoon again. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Denise. I have the privilege of serving Maryland CPAs, accounting and finance professionals as a Director of Development at the MACPA. This is something that we actually came up with as a board and a team in 2021 when Tom took on a new role and we kind of refocused and renewed our promise to our over 8,000 members. Our purpose as an organization is to lead and transform the profession, Maryland first, of course, and make a positive impact to connect and protect and help a CPA-led profession achieve success. Our focus at the MACPA is to really create communities of interest, insight, and innovation to assure a future-ready profession in Maryland. We do this primarily 4 ways. Through community, creating these collaborative, inclusive networks of members through our resources, both internal and some of our preferred providers, where we scan the horizon to really help keep our members informed and ahead. Professional development, of course, where we hope to future ready our members with tomorrow's skills. And advocacy. That's what's founded us in 1901 and continues to be our call to protect and promote the accounting and finance profession in Maryland and beyond. We're going to do some polling today to, one, make sure you get your CPE credit, but also just to get some engagement. And so in the chat, I am putting a link that you can click on and open in another tab to answer those polls, or you see the QR code there. You could take a phone and hold it up there. Or third way, you could just type into a browser bli.cnf.io and then click on this session. It should be right up at the top, FEI Baltimore. And with that, we will start. We'll give you a second. You're going to have to log into that. No, passwords, anything required. Just put your name and email address. That way we can say who answered what polls, so we can award. So Denise can award that CPE credit. I'll give you another second to do that and leave that up here. And if anybody needs this link later on, just let us know. I'm happy to put it back in the chat. But with that, I'm gonna hit this button that says Start Presentation, and you should see this poll open on your device. And it looks like it's working because you all are answering the questions. So looks like right now we are 50-50 between a public company and a private company or public accounting firm. As soon as I said that, we got split, and here comes the rest of the results. So just kind of seeing who's in the virtual room with us today as we have this conversation about what the future of finance looks like, especially given the talent environment that we are all operating in. So it looks like we're pretty split.
Hey, Rebecca, can I interrupt for just one second?
Yes.
Which poll do I select? Is it clients, action, and activation? I got blocked by clicking the link in the chat from my corporate IT group blocked it. So I was trying to do it on the mobile device.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So you should just have, it should just say, where do you work as the poll, or are you not on the actual site yet?
I think it
I
went
used
to,
my camera to go to that link, and
Gotcha.
then
And then if you go to that link, you're going to have to click on the thing at the top that says FEI Baltimore.
yeah, I did not get routed to that. It's okay. I don't need the
well,
CPE. But
click, if you click go back, you'll see the FEI one at the top, and then you'll be able to re-click on that.
Rebecca, I'm getting some questions. Some people aren't able to do this. Can I go ahead and just launch the first question to just in Zoom
We can do that. Sure. Yep.
to capture these guys that are having trouble? Okay, I'm just going to pop it up quickly.
Okay.
yeah, I got a link to Business Learning Institute, and then I'm supposed to put in my name. I hit submit,
Yep.
and then it says polls, respond to a poll by clicking on it. Clients, and then actions and activation ideas, employees, action and activation ideas, supervisors, action and activation ideas.
That's definitely not the right poll. So we will use the one that just came up in Zoom
Cool.
and we will pivot. Yep.
Sorry.
No. Okay, so now we see in Zoom the polls, so we will have that option there, and we'll give it another second or so to make sure everybody that needs to answer for that credit can get it. But we do see private companies being the largest audience we have, followed by public accounting firm, and then nonprofit and other. So maybe in the chat, tell us what we missed. And then public company with 8%. So the next question that we were going to ask, actually, you can maybe close that one down, Denise. We wanted to see what the position or level you are at in your organization, whether that is an individual contributor, or maybe you're in a management role. I think that poll should be opening up shortly. There you go.
Looks like a overall pretty senior group, senior management, C-suite. A few retired.
Okay, guys, I'll stop sharing now.
Okay. And then we had actually one last poll we were going to ask about the credentials that you hold. And I'm not sure, Denise, if in Zoom they're allowed to click multiple options. Is that correct? Or
I do have it set up so they can select more than one.
okay, perfect. I wasn't sure if that was possible.
Want me to pop that up now?
Sure. Yes. So we're just curious as to any credentials that you hold. We're going to talk a little bit today about a couple of them and that impact as well. like about 85% of you are CPAs. That's fantastic. 29% have their MBA.
Okay, you ready for me to stop sharing?
Sure. And we will move on to introduce kind of these global finance leaders that have helped co-create a lot of this content that we have. Tom.
Yeah, so this, when I took this position back in last February, I started reaching out to major CFOs of public companies, for the most part, members that we knew, and began to ask them, what's on their mind or what are they dealing with? And one by one, they pretty much all said the same couple of things. And that led me to ask the question, well, maybe we ought to get together and start to think about co-creating the future. And to my surprise, every one of them said yes. I mean, I'm still in a little bit of disbelief, but this is the group that has become our Future of Finance Leadership Advisory Group. And they helped us. We've met now, this will be 10 times in the last 10 months. And we held a major Future of Finance event in Nashville in December, 2.5 days. And then we just held a major virtual event. We actually ended up with 90 large corporate CFOs with us. So this group are the ones that are kind of informing what we're seeing and where we're going with this whole future finance initiative. So you'll get to hear a lot of those anecdotes as we walk through today's presentation. And this is the purpose that they came up with, literally, to transform the profession in its broadest context and reimagine the finance function of the future to power trust, opportunity, and prosperity. Next slide, please, Becca. So as we start talking about this, I'm a big believer in trends, right? I like to think about these trends. And it was probably the last in-person event I was at before the shutdown was Digital CPA out in Seattle. And we actually got to go visit Amazon's headquarters and the famous Day One building that Jeff Bezos named because of this quote. And you'll find this quote in most of his stockholder letters, annual stockholder letters, but I love what he says about this. So he talks about this idea of day one, and he says it's always day one at Amazon. Then he goes on to say the outside world can push you into day two if you won't or can't embrace powerful trends quickly. If you fight them, you're probably fighting the future. Embrace them and you have a powerful tailwind. Now, at one of his meetings with his employees, somebody raised their hand and said, Jeff, so what's day two look like? And he said, day two is slowly kind of stasis, you're not changing or moving, followed by irrelevance, followed by a slow and painful death. And that's why it's always day one at Amazon. So with that, we're going to share some of the latest trends and issues that we're seeing in the market and ask you what you're seeing as we think about what's coming next, if you will, in this, what I hope is a post-pandemic period. We've been back and forth on this for a while, but Becca, let's go to the next slide and talk a little bit about the research that we've got.
Yeah, so, and of course, day one at Amazon and day one and that mentality doesn't just mean, Sally, the same as last year that our profession loves to kind of implement, right? Because we're not in yesterday's environment. We're in this fourth industrial revolution, or as Nancy Giordano, futurist and corporate strategist, calls it, the first productivity revolution, right? And we're at this time where it's the difference between just change, which, is doing things differently, and really this idea of transformation, right? Which is doing different things. And we're not just seeing the impact of technology moving us from steam to electricity, or from mass production and assembly lines to automation, or, you know, in our profession, from the paper ledger to the spreadsheet, right? We're actually now in what would be called the big deal phase of exponential growth. And COVID has just further accelerated pretty much everything, right? The environment that we are living in. Maybe we saw some of these trends coming years ago, but all of a sudden it is normal. It is every day. So Tom, a little bit about more of these accelerated shifts that we're seeing through COVID.
And one quick point of history for all of you, since this is the Baltimore chapter of FEI, they actually say Baltimore was the epicenter of what we now know as the second industrial revolution, powered by electrical energy, right? That's when mass production, obviously the whole movement to manufacturing became a big shift for us. And at that point, Baltimore was the fastest growing city in the country. And if you look at the Baltimore Museum of Industry downtown, you'll see the big green Bethlehem steel crane. And so B&O Railroad, Bethlehem Steel, Domino Sugar, McCormick Spices, a lot of those names that we all know were the kind of key things that drove the transformation at that phase from that. So I wish we were still the fastest growing city, but certainly the notion of productivity is here with us. And now we'll go back to those other accelerating trends. We work a lot with a futurist named Daniel Burrus. Great book for you, by the way, called The Anticipatory Organization. Highly recommend it. He, about midway through the pandemic, he did some homework for us, and he came up with the pace of change that was accelerated by the pandemic. And he said it's as if the whole world shifted forward 5 years. And look at that first one, e-commerce accelerated by 10 years in the first year of the pandemic. And clearly that's driven a whole lot of the transformation that we're facing in corporate finance groups. AI, machine learning, 5 years in 1 year, data analytics, 5 years in 1 year, cloud, 4 years in 1 year, robotic process automation. You can see that whole list. And on top of that, these other things started to really hit all of us. And it's funny, when I was talking to those CFOs in our advisory group, they said, Tom, it's not like any one of these trends is really big. It's the fact that they're all happening pretty much at the same time. So you can see, added the new ones like inflation, supply chain, broader business reporting, ESG, on top of well-being, trust, business models, remote work, all those other things. So let's go to that next slide, Becca, and talk about, maybe ask them what they see as some of these big issues that we're all facing.
Yep. So Denise, here we have another poll that you could put up for us. We're asking here, what are the top 5 issues that you see post-pandemic? It feels like in some ways we're there, in some ways we're obviously not, but as you look through this list, pick the top 5 issues that you're seeing post-pandemic.
And it looks like that QR code actually is working, Becca, for the future, if anyone wants to keep doing it, but these are working fine. This is good. Okay, let's see what we got here.
We'll give them a couple of extra seconds since it's multiple choice.
Yep. Gotta read through all those options. Yep.
So I always like to compare this to a horse race. Finding and retaining talent looks like it's in the lead right now, followed closely by maintaining culture in a hybrid work environment.
And there's our results.
And looks like 3 would be talent, maintaining culture, and then it looks like a tie for new skills and continued uncertainty in the business environment. And then the next one would be well-being of the team. Oh no, that's actually tied. So we have a three-way.
It's a three-way tie for second, I think. Let me see it here.
All right, let's go and show them what our group came up with. So we've been surveying our major corporate finance groups in the AICPA now since last summer. We continuously do this and poll to see where everyone is. And in fact, right now you can see how this shifted. So early in the summer, those were the major issues going on. By July and August, we started to see talent rising rather quickly. And then it actually moved all the way over to tie for number one. So it went from basically 6 to 2 to 1, and it stayed 1 ever since. It continues to be number 1. You guys are pretty much right on with this, although you ranked accelerated digital transformation a bit lower. And I think you had continued uncertainty up a bit higher. Regardless, in the larger corporates, this whole digital transformation, finance and the business are driving a whole lot of this change. But you're also seeing some new ones rising in there like ESG and DEI, and starting to move up in the survey, if you will. So with that, Becca, let's go to the next slide. So this is research early on that said at the beginning of the pandemic, the Office of the CFO was asked to increase their forecasting and projections by 30 times in the month of March 2020. It's incredible, right? 30 times. And then basically after that, guess what? It really didn't go back, did it? Everyone kept saying, well, what's going to happen next month? And what about this? What about supply chain? What about inflation? How does that affect our forecast? So you can see the big things. Now, clearly, one of the strategies to get to this faster forecast is quick close. So a lot of CFOs were working really hard on putting in the tools to make sure their financial closes were actually a lot faster so that they could do that forecasting even more. So that is part of the whole backstory that's driven this transformation as we come through the pandemic and keep going. Next slide. And this one, it looks like it hasn't rezzed all the way yet. Rebecca, maybe, there it comes. Whoops, there it is. All right. So we've been talking about finance transformation. I know I have probably for at least 15 years. Back when I was a CFO, and we were on an on-prem, barely PC-based accounting system. And it took us like 2 to 3 weeks to close the books. And that was the kind of the really big challenge, because when the CEO would come in and say, I need some forecasts, I'm like, I can't even get my data right, my financials right to forecast off of until another couple of weeks. So as we went through this pandemic, this is the kind of journey, if you will, of a finance professional. We record information, get it collected, put it in the general ledgers, get the trial balance. We then create financial statements for insight, produce what's going on in the business. And then if we're really good, we begin to project with it and talk about what it means to the business, do scenarios, influence the business decisions. And we all hope that what we ultimately do makes a big impact. And so you can see the shift here as tech and automation, like a big Pac-Man coming from the left to the right, beginning to take on those data functions and moving us into new skills required to really work on the influence and impact. It also means a shift from cost to a value mindset. Our future finance group says we're all quickly heading to this role of value partner. And through the pandemic, that as the CFOs pushed up into that right side of this, often their teams were still back trying to close the books and get the numbers right. And that created what we call this talent performance skills gap. And I think we have another slide after this that maybe articulates that a bit as well.
I think that's going to be in the skill set part.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
This is you.
Yeah, so we have to change our mindsets, right? To recognize that we're being asked something different, to recognize the impact of technology, the impact of the changing skills needed in our roles, and to embrace those changes, right? Tom, this idea of the chief future officer. We have a great board member at MACPA named Tim Samuels. He's actually the CFO of Bridgeway Community Church. And when he introduces himself, he says CFO, but he says it doesn't stand for what you think. I create future opportunities. I thought I really like that one too. But Tom, this is your idea of what you've seen with the from where we're moving from. Certainly got us to where we are, but maybe moving us to something else in our profession.
Yeah, this was our future finance group in December. We asked them to project, what do we think the future of finance, what would we look like and be doing? And we projected all the way out to 2030. And then we came back and did one at 2025 and started to create kind of how's our pathway to get there. And the words they used, this was a bunch of what we thought our future state would look like. So, see the shift from rear view mirror to windshield view, hindsight to strategic foresight, a cost mindset to a value focus. This was a big one, right? We had a futurist named Pascal Finette who talked about the fact that given that the pandemic upended many business models, CFOs had to suddenly start supporting both core and edge projects in the business and not just core. And by the way, that means you have to have a completely different repertoire, different KPIs, different ways of measuring progress and stuff when you're dealing with innovative edge businesses in addition to your core. And even at the MACPA, Becca, we dealt with that as we were working on our Business Learning Institute and the core MACPA. So we have to start getting agile and adept at dealing with the core business and what we would call the edge or innovation businesses. That means we have to go from the CF no to the CFKNOW no. Because when you ask a lot of people outside of the finance area, they will say that the CFO is the one that always says no to things. And I think that gets a lot to that edge idea. Anyhow, movement from scorekeeper to an intelligent advisor and a value partner. We have to also get good at both tangibles and intangibles. 80 or 90% of the value of our businesses are not in the financial statements. So we have to start getting good at this idea of thinking about intangible value. We move from descriptive to prescriptive analytics. However, we have to stay standing on our strong foundation of ethics, stewardship, and trust, which is what we all pledge to do in the finance and accounting profession. So that's where we think we're headed. And this gets to one more example, and it's funny. I just saw a Wall Street Journal interview today with the CFO of Unum, who actually is he was in our last future finance group meeting. And he talked about what he was doing there. And I want to look at these stats just to tell you, because I haven't annotated the slide, but think about, we're trying to, we call it flipping the pyramid, right? From the accounting data at the base of that pyramid, 80% of our time getting the accounting data to start filtering up to finance, and then basically the value and data analytics part. And so this is what the CFO said about what they did. So in the last couple of years, they've gone from 70 or 80% of their transaction processing, accounting and finance dedicated to that, the bottom of the left pyramid, to now they're up to 50% on the right side. And he said within the next year to two, it's going to go to 20%. So I've never heard the exact percentages described by a CFO yet, but he certainly got that right, I think. And it's pretty interesting to see that movement. So going from that, 80% to 20% in the next few years, implementing a lot of those changes that we see in that chief future officer idea. Okay, next one.
Tom, those percentages too, I'm just thinking of, there's a fantastic book called Unleash Your Leader, I want to say. It's Emmanuel Gobio, a friend of ours over from the UK, but about research in where we spend our time and where we should be spending our time, especially as we move up into leadership roles. And this idea of, working in the business, working on the business, and working outside the business, and how as we move up in leadership, and I think as the profession changes their role and purpose as technology assists with that, of course. We're moving to more of that working on and out of the business than in the business. And so when I talk to students where their first experience is going to be in the business, I talk to them about how important that is, but knowing what's going to come next. And our Leadership Academy really focuses on that as well.
And Becca, I just chatted the article to that.
Perfect. Yep.
Steve Zabel is the CFO at Unum, and it shows you his journey, if you will. Okay, next one.
Yeah, so this is a report that AICPA did with KPMG. It was actually released in February of 2020. So it's all research done pre-pandemic. But what they found that was the most critical kind of success factor in finance transformation was mindset, right? That where we started with. And that's that ability to embrace change, not just change, but transformation, right? And to maintain that growth mindset, right? That setbacks and things like that are opportunities to learn and to grow. So followed by that mindset component here that you see as accounts for 39% is skill set, right? And it's not the traditional skills that we think of in accounting and finance. It's leadership skills, right? And then given the state of our current talent war and talent environment, I'm actually kind of glad to see that stability of the workforce was pretty low pre-pandemic. Now, I'm not sure if we were to ask this today, whether that stability factor, I think, is causing certainly ramifications through every organization. But that ranked pretty low. So here it's really all about leadership and it's about people, right? We think of transformation and we think of innovation, we think of technology, right? And technology is the tool, but it's not the way that it gets done, and it's not, and it's impeded by mindset, right? You can have the most fantastic tool, but if you don't have a mindset, if you don't have the people in your team that are willing to embrace it, to work out some of the bugs, because I've never gone through a technology transformation in my career that doesn't have some bugs, right? And takes twice as long as we're going to think about that it is, and twice as expensive. But we know on the other side, we have to have that mindset, that growth mindset, to continue to embrace it. So that perfectly sets up, we talked about mindset and how that is key to transformation. Now we have to have the right skill set, right? So Tom, talk to us a little bit about the skills that you've researched as being critical for our profession.
Yeah, we've been doing research in this all the way back when I was at MACPA and BLI there. Business Learning Institute went with me to the AICPA. They ultimately bought it. But we took and mapped all the prior competencies and looked at all the latest trends, the Institute for the Future, the World Economic Forum, a couple of the key books out there by the MIT guys on what's going to happen with robots and how it's going to automate our whole profession. And the reality is the skills were actually shifting. And so we ended up mapping them. So what's a CPA doing? You have all these reports saying, here are the top skills. We put them in a big spreadsheet and we correlated them. Actually, they correlated rather nicely to the CPA Horizons project that we did back in 2011, actually. And so when you looked at those skills, it really brought forth this top 5, and we kind of added one more in the middle called Agile. But this top 5 are built on what we would call boundary crossing skills that go on top of our deep technical accounting functional knowledge, right? Understanding the general ledger, all the data that goes into our accounting systems, along with our industry expertise, et cetera. But on top of that, we build these boundary crossing skills: leadership and sense making, anticipation and serving evolving needs, strategic and critical thinking, or synthesizing intelligence to insight, communication and storytelling, integration and collaboration. And every time we poll these always rise to the top, with the exception of a new one that showed up in the last, I want to say 3 months. It showed up in Nashville, actually. And if you look in the bottom right, that's a research that Pascal Finette did and shared how they're ranking how agile corporate functions are inside the business. Now, it's no surprise that software would be at the top of that list. But look at where finance and accounting is, right? We're all the way down at the bottom. And so what we've seen now is every time we're polling this, and it wasn't even on the map, I want to say 6 months ago, it's now risen into the top 3 to 5 skills that are in demand by finance and accounting professionals. And I thought that was really, really interesting. Now, we just actually were ahead of it. We started working on a project to develop an agile finance series, which we can send you all if you want further follow-up on this, but we literally just released that program. I'm about halfway through it, and I'm impressed. It's a good program, and it's a discipline that we all need, because business is actually accelerating and the cycle times are accelerating, and finance and accounting have to be able to keep up with that rate of change. All right, Becca, next one.
And so actually now we're going to poll you all about what you see as the top skills that you need to thrive in this new normal or next normal. So again, you can choose 5 of these, and we'll
And the
start.
QR code is actually working on these, so in case anyone wants to do it that way. First vote is in. When I do this in Vegas, I always want to kind of put bets on it like a horse race. Like, who do you want to bet for number 3?
Yeah, and I'm not sure with Zoom polling, but I think potentially, Tom, we are seeing the results in real time, but they might not. I feel
It's true.
like in Zoom that we might have to share it. So, so this horse race might be private for now, but we will certainly, when we end it, share the results. Right now, it looks like 93%. So all but one of you right now are saying strategic and critical thinking is one of those. Kelly in the chat. Okay, the Zoom is now working. Okay, good. And please continue to use the chat if you have questions. We want to hear from you. We can, things that you want to ask about what we've talked so far, or go into more detail about. We are monitoring that.
So
but it
Becca,
looks, yep.
Yeah, the strategic and critical thinking is always number 1. Absolutely, it's crazy. And then let's see what they've got next. Number 2 appears to be communication, and no, it looks like leadership and sense making. Communication and storytelling, number 3. Tech savvy, number 4. It looks like technical accounting is number 5. No. Business acumen is number 5, followed by technical accounting. And then you guys rank agile and digital infrastructure as the last 2. Interesting. So slightly different than what we typically see, but good stuff. So now I want to tell you about this part of our exciting project at the AICPA CIMA. And that is the CGMA competency model. Now, I don't know how many, I think we have some CGMAs that were in the audience when they did the initial poll. In the original coming together of CIMA and AICPA 5 years ago, we did a grandfathering. I'm one of those, so I am a CPA and a CGMA. But now going forward, CPAs can actually come in at the strategic case study level. So all you have to do is take the top level, and you could apply for and get the CGMA credential if you're a CPA out there that's interested. But I wanted to show you how we took the T-shaped idea and we mapped it to the curriculum that's in the CGMA. And the CGMA is a chartered global management accountant. But look at the topics there that relate to a lot of the challenges that we all are facing today. And I've got those circled: digital finance, obviously project and people management, business models, et cetera, value management, back to that value partner idea, and strategic management. And they're now available in an unpacked version. We'll give you more on that, but that's being offered through the MACPA as well as through the AICPA. So I just wanted you to see that. But it's worth noting, look at the left, that's the competency model that we use. And out of those 5 categories, digital, technical, right, only one really gets to technical. So 4 out of 5, 80% are actually non-technical accounting finance skills. Kind of interesting. All right, so let's keep moving. And this shows you the entire program, right? Goes from what we call operational to management to strategic case study. Obviously, CPAs come in at the very top level for the strategic case study exam. Finance and accounting degree holders without a CPA would come in at the middle level. And then if you were coming with any other degree or out of a normal college environment, you would go in at the operational level. And there's badges and certificates throughout that. But you get the feeling, operational management, strategic, and it goes from left to right, enterprise pillar, performance pillar, and financial pillar. So it's a pretty comprehensive program, and one that we're starting to see corporates use to develop their finance talent as they go. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about an exciting program that we're starting to kick out to help solve our talent challenges. So Becca, let's go to the next slide. I think we start talking about one more thing on tool sets, and then we go into the talent shortage.
Right. So we talked about how we need to have this new mindset to really think about the future ready CFO and the future of finance. And we need new skill sets, right? But we can't take on new skills, right? We're already kind of at capacity without making room, right? And so as futurist Mike Walsh says, this is where we have to embrace those new tool sets. If we automate things, we elevate the skills of our team. And so where can we find ways to automate so that we can elevate? Technology obviously is a key tool for finance to drive business transformation and growth. Emerging technology like AI, data analytics, automation, robotic process automation, all of these are critical components to the transformation in finance. And so you see here a list of top technologies that were researched by futurist Stan Burris. I just want to, we have quoted talked about research of like 3 or 4 different futurists in this presentation. And just even that fact alone, thinking about 5-10 years ago in our profession, how many of us interacted with futurists? I think that's just an interesting change in what we are doing, going from a historically focused profession, which is still necessary, right, to one that's really more future focused. And the amount of futurists that I run into and talk to these days, crazy. Interesting job. So this is put together by futurist Daniel Burris. And then ranked, he came up with this list of the emerging technologies. And then we had over 1,000 CPAs and CJMAs rank this list about what they are seeing as the top business transformation technologies that they're investing in, that they're seeing as having the biggest impact, right? And the thing is, this list, like we talked about in the 4th Industrial Revolution and the COVID acceleration of that, is constantly changing, and those things are moving up and down. I remember when we first started having CPAs rank this list at the MACPA several years ago, blockchain was really up high, right? And then all of a sudden it ran that Gardner hype cycle, right? It started out like, this thing is going to take over and it's going to be the biggest thing. And it's like, okay, you go into that like trough of disillusionment, I think it is in the Gardner hype cycle. But we're going to see it rise again, probably, right? We just had with MACPA a whole presentation on cryptocurrencies and digital assets and what that is looking like in our world. So these things are going to constantly change. But the thing about this is that we have to have the mindset to go after these things, right? And we have to develop accounting and finance teams that are comfortable with harnessing these technologies that are available and being agile, back to that word, in their adoption, right? In order to not go from, instead of just doing digital or having digital implementations or projects, to really being digital, right? And so I think of the, systems implementation projects, right? That used to take months, years, possibly, for giant ERP systems and all of that. And how are we adapting? How is that moving faster or not? And how are we adding these technologies in to really take advantage of them? And of course, if transformation wasn't enough, if we didn't have to rethink our mindset, our tool sets, our skill sets, We have this another wave sweeping over us, and not just us, really the entire world, of this great resignation, right? And so we have to continue to perform as we transform. And now we're doing that with less people, right? And so back to what Tom said earlier about these top issues, we saw, talent being on that list of certainly a top issue in the summer, and then all of a sudden, right, it jumping up at the end of the summer, and then staying at the top. And I think when I have talked to our leaders in the profession, this is by far the number one issue that we are seeing, this talent war, or great resignation. So we want to open up a poll to see what is it looking like for you? How has the great resignation affected you and your organization? So to get to that a little bit, we're saying is the number of open positions in your accounting and finance team, has that increased greatly, stayed the same, or decreased over the last, year or so? What is that looking like for you?
Horse race is on.
And it looks like we do have a couple NAs, which means that maybe they're the only person on the accounting and finance team, which is great that you have this community of folks at FEI, right? But it looks like for most, actually, this is a lucky group, 47%. They're saying it's kind of stayed the same. Now, maybe it's been a challenge for the past 4 years, and so you still have these same number of open positions. 33% of you are saying it has increased. 0% saying increased greatly. I will tell you that my colleagues in public accounting would definitely have to say increased greatly. They are struggling with this. And over the last few months, I have seen this issue, as I said, unite our profession and unite the MACPA membership like nothing I've ever seen before, right? And to give you a little bit of context, the MACPA membership is actually pretty diverse, right? Half of our members are in traditional public accounting roles as CPAs, ranging from, Big Four to sole practitioners. The other half of our members are in internal corporate and accounting roles, right? From the largest public companies to local small business, government agencies, and nonprofits. And over the last just even 3 months, I have had conversations with CFOs, actually a CFO that kind of Tom and I both had a conversation with that kind of led to us doing this presentation, with managing partners, with professors, educators, and young professionals, all concerned about this issue, right? And there's some macro and micro supply and demand factors here that are definitely influencing what we're seeing as a profession and just as the business world. But there's also this tug between short-term solutions and long-term challenges or opportunities, right? And that's what I think I'm seeing as potentially our biggest risk, right? I'm a former auditor. I work at MACPA now, but was a proud auditor in a former life. And the biggest risk I'm seeing is the idea that in the pain of the immediate need, like I need to get work done today and I don't have enough people, we are potentially, of course, opting for more short-term ROI solutions that actually could have pretty devastating long-term consequences. And so you see that reflected here. If we talk more about technology, which of course we can't ignore, the more the students hear that, the more they actually hear, well, accounting is becoming extinct, right? It's going to be fully automated. There was actually an article back, I guess, in the 80s from Wall Street Journal that said Excel will replace accountants. And when you think about that now, it's laughable, right? No, Excel did not replace accountants. It just replaced how the accountant did their work, right? And that's what these technologies are going to do. But the student doesn't always get that message, right? So they think, better choose a different major. And then the more we react to those declining enrollments by hiring and in some cases paying higher salaries too, because we're competing with these other tech industries, other majors, then that decline continues, right? And so there's just a lot of factors going on and we haven't gotten to the real answer. But I think looking at that short-term solutions and those long-term possibilities are really kind of what we're dealing with. How do we correct the short-term solution and create a strong pipeline for the future of our organizations, knowing that accounting and finance are always going to be critical to every business. After this, I'm going to be driving downtown to talk to the Baltimore Collegiate School for Young Boys, because it is now my role to try and recruit to accounting and finance every student I can. And so I'm going to talk about where do you want to work? Name any organization, any company, anything you could do. And guess what? If it's a job that you want, that means they have money to pay you. And if they have money to pay you, they have an accounting and finance team to manage that, right? And so talking with students, sharing what this profession does is super important. So I mentioned it briefly, but accounting graduates and accounting enrollments are decreasing. And what we're seeing is that those that are also, of those choosing the major, are increasingly choosing not to pursue licensure, CPA licensure, or credentials, right? And so from 2012 to 2017, about 55 to 60% of those accounting grads chose to move on to the CPA exam. Starting about 2017, that percentage started to decline. Right now, we're about 40%. So already the pipeline of potential is down because enrollments are down, graduates are down. And by the way, that's not just a COVID phenomenon. This has been happening over the years. COVID certainly made it worse. Other majors are recovering from those declines. Accounting right now is not. But we're at 40%, right? And so we're concerned. We are concerned about what the future impact this is going to have over the next 4 years as students go through the process and maybe not come out on the other end with that license that is important to us. Those were national stats, and that's the AICPA's trends report, which just came out last week. So you can Google that to see kind of more in-depth details. But this is what I pulled together for Maryland. And so you can see here we had the highest in 2016, 2017. I will tell you that's the result of a new exam that came out in 2017. So what you typically see is a spike right before the exam changes. But since that time, it has been a decline. Now, again, the lowest 372, 396 new CPAs, you could kind of paint oh, that's COVID, Becca, paint over that. But where's the long-term impact? And if COVID is just kind of the go-to excuse, what are we really missing that we're not seeing, right? And I'll tell you that educators are really concerned about this. I mentioned speaking to them earlier, and obviously as one of the key stakeholders in our profession, it is top of mind. Interestingly enough, it's higher top of mind for them than even the changing exam and curriculum overhauls that they're going to have to do with the new CPA exam that is coming in 2024. And so when I talked to department chairs and faculty members across the state just a few weeks ago that represented the largest, public universities in Maryland and the smallest community colleges, the decline in enrollments far outweighed and outranked any other concerns that they were facing. They're having major conversations about, do we have an accounting major at some of these schools? And so it's concerning, right? Now, the AICPA and NASBA has been on this journey to transform the CPA and the CPA licensure process for several years. And in, I guess, the spring of 2020, it was passed this new model that's going to be implemented in January of 2024. And it's a needed and it's a necessary change, right? To reflect or to better reflect the current environment that students are graduating and becoming licensed in. But it's challenging. It's a challenging time to do this because it's asking us, just like you all are having to perform while you transform the business, we're having to do the same as a profession, right? We're having to recruit to a profession and perform as a profession, maintain the public trust as a profession, all while transforming as well. And so this is the new model. You can learn more. I think it's evolutionofcpa.org that walks you through what this is going to look like. But it is a transforming model, and it's going to mean confusion in the marketplace for sure. And so the more people can know about this and we can talk about it, I think is important. So enrollments are down. We're at this great resignation where we're losing higher level people or mid-level people in particular. The pursuit of the credential is down. So what do we do as a profession, right? What can we do to change these things? The Illinois Society of CPAs did some research in their state and that I think is kind of relevant to all of us as well. The survey actually targeted accounting students, graduates, and professionals that were under the age of 35, including CPAs and non-CPAs. And they asked, who influenced your decision to either pursue or not to pursue the CPA license? Unfortunately, professional organizations like MACPA, like AICPA, like FEI, only 5%, right? The work that we do as professional associations, although very important, right, had a very low impact on their decision, right? After themselves, which, you know, kind of can throw that one out, their employer and their professor were the most influential people in helping them pursue or decide their decision to pursue licensure or credentials, right? And so Tom and I got to share a little bit about what our respective organizations are doing, because it really takes all of us to right this ship. But I just wanted to put this slide up there and ask you to help us, right? Help us build the pipeline of future talent for your organizations, for our organizations, and our profession as a whole. So Tom, talk about the Finance Leadership Program.
Yeah, so again, given the fact that now more corporations are developing and building their own talent pipelines, we wanted to make sure that this is part of the reason the AICPA and CIMA came together, is to provide that extra pathway for those in management and corporate accounting to not detract from the core CPA pipeline. Although we would still say the platinum standard is a CPA and a CGMA, like I am and many of you are. But what you could do, though, if you want to develop your talent inside your corporate area, we have this finance leadership program that leads to the CGMA designation. It's all online. It goes through those different levels depending on at what point your person might be coming in. Do they have a finance accounting degree? They come in at the second level, or management. Do they have an accounting degree? With a CPA, they go right to the strategic case study. The point is that you could then have them work through that and begin to build that out over the next year or two to get their full credential in corporate or management accounting. Now, what's cool about it is it's all case study based. In other words, it's applicable. The learning's immediately applicable. They give you these great case studies to actually apply what you're learning, as opposed to rote memorization and multiple choice answers. So that's what's behind this FLP. You can get it all, look at it at cgma.org. But the next slide is the one we're most excited about, which is we've now filed and gotten the first white collar registered apprenticeship in the finance and accounting profession. It's with the U.S. Department of Labor, and it's called a registered apprenticeship for a finance business partner. And this allows us then to go from college or even down into a community college and move people into the CGMA FLP and start to get some of the benefits of these big apprenticeships that are advertised at both the federal and state level. So we're working inside right now about 5 states to begin to pilot this type of program, actually from community colleges. And we're partnering with NABA, the National Association of Black Accountants, to actually accelerate a diverse pipeline. It would also apply to military, retired military, or military that are leaving the service and looking for another career, or career changers. So you get the kind of basics there, but yeah, you can send me a note if you want more on it. Go ahead, Becca, next talk about Maryland.
Yeah, so we're excited about this registered apprenticeship and assisting the AICPA and the Tom's team in bringing that to Maryland. I think we have a call actually next week with a community college in Maryland that's interested in pursuing some of these things. So while Tom is still a resident in Maryland, we're always going to try and pull the best resources here first. But the MACPA over the last 2 years has expanded our foundation to go beyond just providing scholarships, which of course we still do. In fact, I just got our scholarship application closed just last week. We had 10 times the number of applicants this year for that scholarship program than the prior year. So our work is cut out for us. But we're also wanting to create more programs, more initiatives that build a stronger, more diverse and inclusive profession, right? Because it makes business sense, because it's just the right thing to do as well. One of the programs that I'm probably most excited about is our junior achievement program and sponsorship. We've always supported junior achievement, and they're fantastic initiatives that bring financial literacy to students of all ages. But we are able to do so in a bigger way this year with our new expanded foundation. So MACPA is the official CFO sponsor of Junior Achievement of Central Maryland's BizTown. This program will see 10,000 fifth graders come through it next fall and spring. And so they're going to learn how the economy works. They're going to take part in hands-on financial literacy activities. And then our hope is that through the curriculum, through the branding that you see here, that features real CPAs in Maryland. You see Tim, I actually mentioned him already, Tim, CFO of Bridgeway Community Church, Samantha Bowling, who is a partner at Gobelman Winslow in Southern Maryland. And then on this wall mural, we have Kimberly Ellison Taylor, CPA, CGMA, I think CITP, just everything, CISA, but just an amazing leader in our profession from Baltimore. And Jeff Gehring, who is the CFO of the Baltimore Ravens. He's pictured there with his Super Bowl trophies. I'm hoping that catches some kids' eyes. But our hope is that these students can start to see themselves in accounting and finance roles, right? That they see that this is possible for them. One of the things and the reasons why I decided to go to this school I'm going to this afternoon is because I saw the plea on LinkedIn for business people and to come and kind of talk about their careers. And they had this long list of careers they were looking for. They wanted lawyers, they wanted doctors, nurses, firefighters, you can name it. They named YouTubers as a profession that they were looking for people to come talk to their student. And missing from their list was anything to do with accounting and finance. And it just was stark to me to realize that these students don't even know about this career path. They don't even know about the possibilities. And so that's why I'm really passionate about that. You probably, even through this screen, can get that, and why I'm spending the afternoon with them today. So that students can see themselves in these roles through these role models, like yourselves and like these CPAs that we're highlighting. One of the things that we're doing on May 24th that we're super excited about is our Celebrate the Profession. It's the first time we're doing a foundation fundraiser, but what we're doing it around is actually celebrating the amazing accounting and finance leaders that have really been kind of the silent helpers in a way, the unknown heroes of the last 2 years, right? And several of our MACPA members and population have won awards, right? But kind of missed that recognition that they deserve because of the pandemic. And so we're bringing them together. One of the highlights is where we're recognizing MACPA past chair, former CFO, now I think a president of a government contractor in the DC region, but is stepping in as chair of AICPA. Super proud of that, Anup Mehta, on May 17th. So we're going to celebrate together and hope to raise funds that we can continue to ensure that all those 10 times scholarships that I mentioned can be funded, and that our profession continues to thrive and really provide meaningful and fruitful career opportunities from people of all backgrounds, right? That event also is going to be immediately following our business and industry conference. So we're bringing some timely topics like cybersecurity, talent retention, state of the economy, wellness, all of those things. So if you're interested in that, you can learn more about that as well. It looks like it got cut off, but it's macpa.org/industry, and then hang out for that Celebrate. But Tom, I think we have one last poll, and we were going to do this in Conferences.io, where we can have the open-ended polls. So we can do that in the chat instead if you want. Just in the chat, we'd love to know your biggest insights from our conversation today, or if you have any questions about some of the things we talked about. You know, it was a kind of a whirlwind over the last hour or so, but what's your biggest insight? What is standing out to you?
And then we'll wrap up with a few closing thoughts, and you get an hour and a half of CPE from this. But yeah, what's sticking out for everybody as you listen to this? Presentation. And you're going to want to stay because we close with the 5 things you need to do to win in the Great Recession. By the way, we do have a past chair of the MACPA, Tammy Bensky, that's on here with us today, as a matter of fact. So hello, Tammy. Yeah, let's see if they're putting some insights into the chat. Looks like they're being pretty quiet here. Oh, here they
come. It takes a while to type out a whole thing, right? The convergence of tech, data, and accounting fundamentals. Financial education in an early age should help attract future talent. Long overdue in the education system. Yes, Graham, and we're seeing pushback on that too, with the emphasis on STEM. Funding for having some of those courses is hard to get, but we're working with Baltimore City in particular right now. And I know that there is a bill in Congress. It's in the House and the Senate at this point. Hasn't moved very much in either of those, but actually to get accounting designated as part of STEM, which of course would then provide funding and hopefully flow a little things more strong. The importance of the T-shaped professional, eye-opening.
Keeping the CPA pipeline strong.
Yes. Yep, and that's Matt Keatle, one of our MACPA champions. Hey, Matt.
Yep. I see Matt on LinkedIn all the time. By the way, if you go on LinkedIn, we've got a series of great interviews. If you go on and click on search and put hashtag Future Ready Live and subscribe to that, you'll see every Tuesday, every first Tuesday and third Tuesday of the month at noon, we feature a new interview with people from our future finance group or major thought leaders like Pascal Finette and Britt Andriotta, who we'll close with here in a minute. But that's a great way of keeping in touch with those types of things. Yeah, let's talk about some of the closing thoughts and then go to Q&A for the last couple of minutes, Becca, if we need to. So
yep.
Next slide, you can still be putting in your insights there, but this was Britt Andriotta. She's a neuroscientist, which I thought was interesting. She blew our group away when she explained that this Great Resignation is more than just the pandemic. She said there's a whole lot of things going on in brain science. The worn out of just people have been worn out from all of the transformations that have been going on, all of the things that have been happening in our economy and in our world. Of course, now you can add the war in Ukraine and inflation, all kinds of crazy things that are increasing this idea of burnout. So she had 5 investments to make. And I want to point to her book, Wired to Resist. If you're doing anything that's transforming your organization, you're going to want to know how people's brains are actually physically wired to actually resist. So this gives you some techniques to kind of deal with that in a proactive way. But 5 things: actively address burnout. Yeah, it's real. Give people a break. Let them know it's okay to not be okay. I know we Every week we talk about positive things with our team, and we certainly say, if you're not up to it, take some time off, or what can we do to help you get better? Create a better workplace, that well-being and inclusion. Of course, that was one of your top issues. Build on the transformation. The transformation is ultimately about improving your business and becoming more competitive. And Lord knows we all have to keep doing that. So critical, and show them that it's a progression and not just another drudgery that they have to deal with. Dial up your talent team. That's investing in the talent, get them trained properly and those kind of things. And last, focus on purpose and meaningful work. One of the things we did with our future finance group is they all started to share their finance purpose. And about 10 of them had really compelling finance purposes, right? I remember Nike had a really cool one. We've got the Branson Space Group, Virgin Galactic. We got their controller on our panel. They've got some really cool purpose statements. It's worth doing your own purpose, even if your company has one. Think about one for your finance group. So next slide, Becca, I think is back to the idea. You said this earlier. Go ahead and talk about it. This is perfect, because this came from a Microsoft. Satya Nadella used it, but it's based on the work of Jim Collins. Go ahead and tell them how this works.
Yeah, it's embracing the genius of and, right? We have to perform to deliver the results today, and we have to transform. We have to achieve our vision, and that's the power that moves and drives us forward, right? It's the exciting parts of our job sometimes, to think about what's next. And I always love the quote from Robert Savian. We're from Fast Company. We're not in business to make money. Some of us are, but we have to make money to stay in business. And so that idea of purpose, I think, especially as we talk to students these days, you can't underpay them, that's for sure. But purpose, meaningful work, connecting them to the bigger big of their role in the organization. I think technology allows them to see some of that clearer and better. But yeah, it's this idea of embracing the and. It's not or. You're not having to choose between the two things. It's saying it's an and it will be for the foreseeable future, right? This transformation is not a destination. It is a process, and it is a continuation, right? It's helpful if you think of the concept of the gap versus the gain, to take a second to look back. Tom talking about what's positive in your day and with your team too. There's real brain science about how even just a couple minutes of reflecting on things that you're grateful for or what's gone right can really open you up to be more creative and critical thinking for what's next. And so looking at the gain that you've made and then taking that to look forward to the gap, right? Always moving forward. So performing while we transform. And then Tom, you want to talk about this, of how we can leave them with kind of a tool to really start to think through some of these trends we've talked about.
Yeah, this came from Deloitte Center for Controllership, and we adapted it and modified it slightly, but it's a great worksheet to help you think through your finance transformation. When people get overwhelmed and trying to think about what do I focus on, it's a great, typical 4-box grid, but think about what can we automate? That's where you should start, given all those new technologies that are available. And then what should we initiate, build, or new things that will help us move into that tomorrow state faster? What are we doing now that we should accelerate or enhance, amplify? Those are things that have real potential, and we got to get moving on them. And then finally, the hardest one for all of us to do is what can we stop, dismantle, or eliminate? So that's just a little handy worksheet for you as we wrap up here. The next slide, I know, Becca, this sits right behind your desk at the MACPA in the old days, but this is our kind of theory about what we think is critical right now. It's if we're going to be successful in this period of rapid change and increasing complexity, we're going to have to be the people who can learn faster than the rate of change and faster than the competition, or L greater than C squared. And then the final slide to leave you right on time has to do with what I call the trip of my life. I got invited to speak at a conference in Bora Bora. Took my wife last day. We're snorkeling, met this guy, Dennis Schneider, who's a French marine biologist trained at the University of Maryland. And he said, he picked up this coral rock and he said, here's the problem we have. The coral is dying fast because of all of the crazy trends, right? Warming of the oceans, pollution, suntan oil, and all those things. And he said, we figured out pretty early that we weren't going to be able to stop or reverse those trends fast enough. And if the coral dies, our whole marine ecosystem, all the life in the sea will go with it. So he said, instead, we took a different attitude. We said, what could happen if we could speed up the adaptation of the coral so it grows faster than the trends that are trying to kill it? And sure enough, down at University of Maryland, they created this thing called BioRock, where they run a little electric current through the coral, like an artificial coral rock. And then the coral grows at an exponential rate and outpaces the trends in global, the kind of warming of the oceans and the pollution. And so that's the idea. And I think that's a great lesson for all of us who are leaders of people, which most of you on the call are. It's this idea that how can we help our groups adapt faster than this rate of change that's coming at us? So instead of thinking accounting and finance is going to be obsolete, we can move to the chief future officer. And we have to do that through anticipating what's coming, be agile for the things that we can't see coming, and there will be those, and then constantly adapting with our teams so that we progress together as a finance and accounting profession. So with that, I want to thank all of you for giving us your time today. Becca, any final closing remarks as we close out this?
I want to hang on a little bit and see if we get any questions in the chat, but I will say thank you again for having Tom and I, and yeah, do what you can to help us in this pipeline issue too. Tell your story. I think that's what I found to be the most impactful thing for students, and just telling what you do and why you do it, more importantly, and sharing that proudly with students, with kids, and that's what I get to go do this afternoon that I'm very much looking forward to. But it is a pleasure and a privilege to serve this great profession in Maryland, to be part of this great profession in Maryland, and to serve it. So thank you all for hanging with us and talking about some things that sometimes sound a little scary, right? We don't love to change. I think it's against human nature, but how can we adapt faster, and how can we really win this talent war and transform our roles and purposes inside our businesses to win this challenging time? I haven't seen any questions come in, and I think we're officially at the time where you got your 1.5 credit hours, I believe. Denise, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
We've made it.
We've made it.
We've made it.
I know that's important too. So thank you all again for having us, and I'll put my contact information in the chat, and I will send these slides over to Denise to share with you all as well. And we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Tom and Rebecca.
You're very welcome, Denise. Have
Y'all
a
have a
great
great
day, everybody.
Have a great day.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.